Alright, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's the Red Shadow once again, and this is going to be my Summer Game Fest 2023 video. Basically, I'm just going to kind of talk about the games that were shown and my thoughts on each of them, and kind of an overall thought about the entire show at the end. I will, once again, like I did with the previous one, the PlayStation May 23 showcase, I want to say that I went into this with a little bit more tempered expectations than I did with the PlayStation show, but I still expected it was going to be pretty decent, and I was hoping for, once again, some games we hadn't heard anything about that would be kind of like, yeah, cool, that's hype, cover a little bit more of some games that we already knew about, show some more indies, and then hopefully kind of have a good overall presentation, and then something big to kind of to be revealed at the end. And overall, I think it kind of met that, but we'll talk about that, like I said, at the end of this. So let's just jump right on in. I'm kind of working on limited time with my camera battery. If it ends up cutting off or getting too close to being dead at the end, I'll stop it and pick it back up and then splice the two videos together. But once again, we had Geoff Keighley's first Summer Game Fest with a live audience. The Summer Game Fest started in 2020, and that was with COVID. So it was a remote, digital only event. And then there was 2021 and 2022. I think the first two were basically digital showcases. The one last year was like on stage with developers, but no live audience. This one had a live audience, which was cool. It was a pretty decent size. It's like the YouTube theater or whatever it's called. But in my opinion, compared to like E3 shows, when the crowd was cheering and clapping the most, it still didn't sound as impressive as E3 shows did. But, what can you do? So Geoff came out and got his show started off, and the first game he showed was a surprise. It's Prince of Persia, but it wasn't the remake that kind of got pushed back, and who knows what's going on with that at this point. It was a new game called Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and it's basically a 2D side-scrolling action game. I've heard some people say Metroidvania, but I don't know for sure that it's backtracking and doing all of that, or if it's just proceed through the levels and advance to the next one. It's a very cool-looking game. It interests me. So that was a nice, pleasant way to kick off the Summer Game Fest. It's coming out in January. Excuse me. The next thing that they showed was a deep dive into the gameplay of Mortal Kombat 1. Fighting games used to be a genre that I absolutely loved. I have a couple fighting games amongst my all-time favorite games. They're both Mortal Kombat games. But the last several Mortal Kombat games for me, like 9, the one that was originally just rebranded as Mortal Kombat without a number. Then there was X or 10, and then there was 11, and then this is going to be Mortal Kombat 1 because they're like rebooting the story. I won't bother trying to explain it because, like I said, I don't know enough about Mortal Kombat now, but it looked cool. The graphics were nice. The fighting seemed to set itself apart from Street Fighter 6, which is out, Tekken 8, which comes out later. Street Fighter 6 is very splashy and colorful, vibrant. Tekken 8 looks very like over the top and also very splashy. And Mortal Kombat seemed to go for a little bit more of a subdued style, and the gameplay looks to be slower than the other two, but I don't think that's a negative. I think it's going to help Mortal Kombat stand apart from the other two games. The fatalities are gruesome, and the sound effects and the visual effects are crazy. And I'm just, happy that gamers who like fighting games and Mortal Kombat will get that game in September, I believe. They had Ed Boon out on stage, and that's cool. They mentioned a fact that I thought was really awesome. The guy has been loyal to this one gaming series for more than 30 years at this point. So you just don't see that very often. A lot of people get tired of doing the same thing. And maybe Ed Boon and his company have been responsible for other games, but I don't think he really cares. I think he loves Mortal Kombat as much as anybody else. So that was cool. There was a brief trailer for Path of Exile 2, which is, I hate to distill a whole genre down to this one statement, but it's a Diablo-like. It looked a lot like Diablo 4, which is also a game that came out recently. They showed an interesting crossover between Street Fighter VI and Capcom's upcoming Exoprimal multiplayer dinosaur shooting game. And you'll be able to play as a couple of Street Fighter characters that sort of look like stone cyborgs or whatever. Neither of those games really do much for me, so on to the next thing, which was a very fun situation. Jeff Keighley makes a comment about crazy crossovers in gaming, and then reveals that Nicolas Cage is coming to Dead by Daylight as a survivor in the future, and Nicolas Cage was on stage with Jeff Keighley, and Nick Cage is one of those guys that everybody just sort of loves. It's kind of like a Keanu Reeves, although I think Keanu Reeves is the lovable guy and Nick Cage is just sort of the wacky guy. But he had an interesting showing up there talking about the game. Even if it was rehearsed lines or whatever, he at least came prepared to sound like he knew what he was talking about in the gaming world. What a grab for Jeff Keighley, right? So that was shown. They moved on and they showed a trailer for The Witcher on Netflix. Now, as much as I love The Witcher 3, I don't really have a whole lot of interest in this show. Excuse me. I think that's mainly because it's based more off of the books. It's a visual interpretation of the books, whereas the game, of course, it draws from the books, but it sort of did its own thing over the course of that series. And The Witcher 3 is, one of my favorite games of all time. So I don't really have much interest in this. We moved on to a couple of rapid-fire game clips. A game called Witchfire, which looks really cool. Crossfire Sierra Squad, which I think I mentioned in the PlayStation Showcase. That's a VR game for the Meta. Well, this was announcing for the Meta Quest. And maybe the Crossfire game at the PlayStation Showcase was for the VR 2, and it's different. I'm not sure. And then they showed Remnant 2, the sequel to Remnant from the Ashes. Witchfire is the only thing in that batch that I kind of have an interest in. The other two, not so much. So we'll move on to Sonic Superstars. A 2D Sonic game, but done in a 3D graphics, not like sprite graphics. It's Sonic. I kind of have this love-hate affair with Sonic. So that didn't really move the needle so much for me. So we'll move on to Honkai Star Rail. This is from the same people who do Genshin Impact. I've played a little Genshin. It was fine, but I don't really have much of an interest to go back to it or to play Star Rail. We got trailer for Lies of P, and a demo was coming out. Lies of P comes out in September 19th. It's a Souls-like game with a weird retelling or weird interpretation of the story of Pinocchio. Looks cool, but Souls-like games just aren't for me. Next thing we saw was Sandland. This is a game based on, I guess, a manga from Akira Toriyama, or it's his art style anyway. It looked kind of cool, but couldn't really tell much about what was going on in the game itself with that trailer. Then we saw something called Throne and Liberty. It's an open world MMORPG from Amazon Games and NCSoft. Looked nice graphically. It looked cool, but not a me game. And they showed a game called Warhaven, which, to be honest, looked samey, except looked more like For Honor, Ubisoft's sort of like melee action game. Warhaven had some of that look, but also sort of looked MMO-ish. Then we had another little series of trailers. Party Animals finally has a release date of September. That's sort of a Gang Beasts-like game. Content update for Dying Light 2 is coming, and a trailer for Crash Team Rumble was shown, but it kind of glitched in the middle of it. That's just a weird multiplayer game for Crash. Doesn't do much for me. We had Alan Wake 2 again. This had more of what we saw in the PlayStation Showcase, including some actual just raw, as Jeff Keighley put it, raw, unedited gameplay. Like I said, that one still sits high for me. That's coming out October 17th. A trailer for Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 looks cool, but doesn't really do much for me. We had an indie game called Yes, Your Grace Snowfall. The only thing I want to say about this one is that the graphical style looked like the sort of cyberpunk game called Replaced that's coming out in the future. But it's like medieval times. But I don't, whereas Replace is something I'd be interested to checking out. This Yes, Your Grace Snowfall didn't really capture me enough to want to play it. And it's a sequel, so I'd have to check out the first game anyway. We got a multiplayer zombie, sort of like Left 4 Dead, Back 4 Blood game called John Carpenter's Toxic Commando. But one thing I liked about it that sets it apart from those other games is there's a lot of vehicular combat included in it, and I think that's a nice touch or addition. The next thing we showed was Baldur's Gate 3. This is this game that I forget about it when I don't see it, but then when I see it, I'm like, I really want to play this. I'm looking forward to checking this one out sometime in the future. They basically just showed that actor Jason Isaacs is going to be voicing a character. Comes out at the end of August. Then we saw Spider-Man 2 again. Now this surprised a lot of people, and me even a little bit. They came back, showed some concept art, had the game director there, but they told the release date, which was going to be October 20th. So it was nice. That was the cool way of having Sony still represented on the main Summer Game Fest show, even though their showcase was under the banner of the Summer Game Fest. They threw them a little bone by giving them the release date reveal of October 20th. Quick couple of trailers. Pal World, Pokemon with Guns. Okay. A Black Desert Online expansion of some sort, and The Lord of the Rings Return to Moria. I saw some people kind of saying Lord of the Rings Return to Moria looked like non-space Deep Rock Galactic multiplayer mining tower defense, who knows. And they had a trailer for mobile game Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, a game I would really, really like to see come to consoles or even PC in the future. It kind of tells the entire tale of Final Fantasy VII and the compilation games without a remake, without changing the story, but adding all of it into one big game. But it's going to be a mobile game. That's a big thud for me because it looks like a cool concept. It looks like what the remake should have been, where, like I said, just modernize the graphics and the gameplay, but tell the original story. Don't come up with something crazy and out there. It's a nice alternative, and like I said, I hope it doesn't get locked away to just mobile. Then they showed Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden, a very Witcher-looking game from Don't Nod, and that, to me, that's just enough for me to be on board. It just looks really awesome, graphically, gameplay-wise. I'm into it. Then we saw Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. This is the next game with Kiryu from the original games, whereas the Ichiban from Like a Dragon 7, well, that was the first game where they call it Like a Dragon and not Yakuza. But this continues some of Kiryu's story. Comes out November 9th. Very interested in this one because I played Yakuza 0 this year and I really enjoyed it. I've got a lot of games yet to go, but I'm very interested in all of the upcoming Yakuza games. And we saw sort of an underwater game. It was hard to tell if it was supposed to be just a narrative-driven, if there's supposed to be some horror or psychological elements, but it was called Under the Waves. Looked really cool. Comes out in August. Trailer for Call of Duty Warzone, a new season, a new map. Doesn't do much for me. Fae Farm was shown next, a life simulator, sort of like Harvest Moon and Animal Crossing, coming to Switch in November. Too cutesy, even for me. Marvel Snap was shown next. Didn't really care. It was kind of funny. The Ben Brode, the game director of Marvel Snap, is he could maybe be the next Joseph Ferris in terms of big personality. But Marvel Snap does nothing for me. Then a bunch of little trailers. We had King Arthur, let's see, Wayfinders, where he plays King Arthur, Unreal Editor in Fortnite, Stellaris game, Space Trash Scavenger, and Star Trek Infinite. The only thing in there that really got my attention was something Star Trek related, but I don't really know what that game is going to be. We saw a trailer for the Twisted Metal show. Looked weird, not gonna lie. Looked kind of strange, but I'm still kind of curious about that show. I don't expect much from it. And there was a game called Liz Fonga, the Time Shift Warrior. Interesting art style, top-down action RPG. I don't know if it'll be any good. A big, long, beefy trailer for Immortals of Avium. I continue to feel like I did in the PlayStation Showcase video. Maybe it'll be alright if it's a lot of story-based and it isn't as much trying to... If the Call of Duty with magic isn't the supreme focal point of it and it's just that shooting action with magic, I'll be interested as long as they kind of give it some story. But if not, I don't know. That's out in the month in July. Fortnite Wilds, a new trailer or event, or a new season or event in Fortnite. I don't do Fortnite, so aside from this having like Optimus Prime in it, it didn't do much for me. And then the last thing, the big reveal, excuse me, was that they had a new trailer for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So, even though I was talking about the Ever Crisis mobile game earlier and really liking that, the non-remake story and all that kind of stuff, I'm still excited to play the other two installments of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. This looks really cool. Graphically, it's very, very nice. I'm waiting to see more of the characters from the original game show up in this. I was already into the battle system and combat and all that, so I'm sold there. So now it's just trying to figure out where they're going to go with the story, how much they diverge from the original story, how much familiar elements remain in there, and all I can speculate on there is that it'll be cool, it'll be well done, it'll be shocking and surprising. I'm hoping we get to see my boy Vincent Valentine. They showed all of the characters that we've seen up to this point, including the Intergrade edition of Yuffie. We got Barrett and Cloud and Aerith and Tifa and Red 13 and Yuffie. I don't even care because I hated her in the original game. But I'm waiting to see Sid. I'm waiting to see Vincent Valentine in particular. He's my favorite of all the characters, even though Cloud is pretty high for me as well. And then I'm waiting to see, and I don't know the correct way to pronounce it, Kate Sith, Kai Sith, Kate She. I've heard that it's not just Kate Sith like it looks like. Excuse me, but I don't really care one way or another. It's a weird character, but I'll be interested to see how that character incorporates into this new vision of the game. And then, of course, the potential for more Zack, the potential for other characters from, say, Advent Children or from Before Crisis. Will we get Dirge of Cerberus stuff? How much are they going to incorporate from the entire compilation series into this? Those are big questions that I have. I'm very, very curious to see how that will all play out. So overall, I thought that was a really cool way to end the show. It's awesome that Jeff Keighley got that. Lots of people were expecting either Hideo Kojima with Death Stranding 2, or would there be something else from FromSoft, like the Elden Ring DLC? And he got Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So that was really awesome. That's coming out early 2024 with a big advertising bullet point on 2 discs. And everybody, I have to talk about this for a moment because my battery is going to give me the time. Everybody is like, "Oh, why? What's such a big deal about on 2 discs?" Especially the original game was on 3 discs, and lots of PS1 games came on 2, 3, or 4 discs. And people say, why is this a big deal when PS4 games like Red Dead 2 and Final Fantasy VII, I think remake originally, and a few other games had an install disc and a play disc. That's 2 discs. I don't think you advertise this as on 2 discs if one's going to be an install disc and one's going to be a play disc, because we've already seen that happen. They've done it themselves. This has to be a game where they're like, there's so much content, you're going to have to put a disc in and then be told at some point, take it out, put the other one in. I'm like 99% sure that that's something that's going to happen with this. And it's just kind of cool. If that's all they meant was to tip of the cap to the old days of multiple discs, then cool. And I think another thing people have been speculating about was, how are they going to take this game the way that they did the first remake, which was just Midgar? How are they going to skimp on the rest of the game to get it to just 3 in total installments? They could fly through that. They could make that. They could focus on very particular parts of Final Fantasy VII for this middle installment, and then focus on kind of endgame-ish stuff for the last installment. Or they could really go beefy in, deep dive into these other places. You've got Cosmo Canyon, you've got Gold Saucer, you've got Junon, Costa del Sol. You got a whole bunch of stuff that could be covered in this middle installment before the last game would really kind of expand a lot of the final events in the game. And it doesn't have to be 50 hours of just battling Sephiroth, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of happens near the end of the game that could be expanded. I think they could really do this, and 2 discs feels like their way of saying, we're gonna deep dive like we did with Midgar in the first game. We're gonna really deep dive into all of these different places, and that's why we have to give it to you on 2 discs. I think that's promising. I think that's cool. But yeah, we'll see. That's, at this point right now, that's probably between 6 and 8 months away. I don't think it's going to work for me that I'll have a PS5 by that point, and it'll suck because then spoilers and shit like that will be out there. But man, that's cool. That's pretty awesome to know about something that's coming in 2024 to PS5. But yeah, so that was the Summer Game Fest. I thought it was a really good show. I thought we went from like PlayStation Showcase was here and Summer Game Fest is here. So where does Xbox Showcase fit into that? That'll be on the next video that I talk about. I hope I didn't forget any points that I was going to make here at the end. I just thought that Jeff Keighley's show, I guess this broad opinion, good show, better than the PlayStation Showcase. I think Jeff can do better. I think he could bring a little bit more, but that's not even really at all up to him. That's what the publishers and developers have to show. It's not on Jeff Keighley to make sure that the show is just loaded with bangers after bangers. But I think that his show has the ability to really grow and expand, especially if E3 does not come back next year or the year after, if it's gone totally. I think he will have bigger and better things to show. I will address one last thing, the advertising parts of the show where a game trailer is shown, but it's obvious that it wasn't a reveal. It's just a commercial to help to pay for the show. I wish that more people out there who are watching these shows would stop raking a guy like Keighley over the coals because of having to do that. It has to be done. Sometimes because the show kind of started and it was chugging pretty good, and then it started to dip before near the end, in my opinion, it kind of picked back up. Those lulls, those long periods of times with like trailer, oh, here's Jeff to talk. You know that during that time frame they were just paying the bills. But I saw some people who are like, the show just needs to be trimmed down. It was like an hour and 45 minutes. Trim that show down to like an hour. But he still has to pay for the show. It still has to be funded. It's funded through games and game companies, and I wouldn't want it done any other way. I don't want any more Gillette razor blade men. I don't want any more stupid tie-ins to Spike TV and Taco Bell and a bunch of dumb bullshit. So I can take some slowdowns in there to pay for the show, so to speak, if that's what it takes. So that's just my kind of like my little final assessment about that. So thanks for watching if you made it to this point. Next video that I will do will be the Xbox and Starfield showcase and direct. And yeah, that should be it. I don't think I have any need to sort of cover the rest of the stuff that was done. All right, so that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.